The original Spider Island was a 2011 comic book storyline spinning out of the pages of Amazing Spider-Man and eventually crossing over with a bunch of other ones. The main plot involves the inhabitants of Manhattan Island mysteriously gaining powers similar to that of Spider-Man. It featured the return of characters like the Jackal and Queen Spider. And while the original story isn't exactly what I would call well-loved or well-remembered, in 2015 as part of the Secret Wars event we are getting a brand new Spider Island. So with that, let's hop into the first issue. As the comic opens, we are treated to a completely ravaged New York. The spider virus has crossed over into the superhero community now, and as such, there's a bunch of horrible spidered up super people patrolling the streets for the Spider Queen. Only a handful of heroes are immune to the sickness, like Flash Thompson, aka Agent Venom, whose symbiote manages to shield him from the sickness. Flash was, of course, a big player in the original Spider Island. In fact, I dare say his tie-in was probably one of the better ones. Then, of course, there's Vision, who's a robot, so he doesn't get sick. The two men are pulling off a daring raid to try and gather some medical supplies for their resistance community. It's on the way they meet another one of their agents, Jack Russell, aka Werewolf by Night, who by day is yet another one of the Spider Queen's slaves, but by night, when he transforms into a werewolf, the control is broken. Also, man, Werewolf by Night has been getting a massive push. He's going to be on that new Monsters of S.H.I.E.L.D. team. He's in Miss Deadpool and the Howling Commandos. Jack passes off some information to Agent Venom about a possible cure that Horizon Labs was working on before the downfall of the city. We also learn a little backstory that the superhero community was actually putting up a pretty strong front against the Spider Queen, but it all went south when Spider-Man himself died, in doing so kind of cutting out the heart of all the heroes. This is also cool because it plays into Flash Thompson's greater hero worship of Spider-Man, and now he feels that in Spider-Man's absence he kind of needs to rise up to help fill the void. The heroes fight their way inside Horizon Labs, past legions of spider soldiers, as well as a six-armed Hulk and a horrifying spider Captain Marvel. It's a trap, but the heroes accounted for this. In fact, they want to flip the trap into a trap of its own. Seeing as the spider sickness only affects human DNA, the answer is quite simple. They just need to change the human's DNA to get the good guys back on their team. They do this through a combination of Kurt Connor's lizard formula, Morbius's vampire formula, and just a splish splash of whatever the hell it is that made J. Jonah Jameson's son into a werewolf. And it's with that our heroes have everything they need to turn the tide against the Spider Queen as the comic ends. Can Flash Thompson and his ragtag team of heroes ever hope to defeat the Spider Queen and save New York? Let's find out together, shall we, as we dig on into the pages of Spider Island number 2. As the comic opens, our heroes are still under fire by spider-fied members of the Avengers. Iron Man is blasting off at Vision with his chest beam, and Iron Fist is attacking everyone else with his extra spider fists. Luckily, our heroes were able to bolster their forces last issue. We now have vampirized Captain Marvel, who I've decided to take to calling Count Marvel because, hey, why not? A scaly lizard Hulk, who I really can only call Skulk, and who could possibly forget good old werewolf Captain America, or Capwolf for short.
Fun fact time, comic fans. Did you know that this is actually not Captain America's first brush with Lythropia? It's true. You see, all the way back July 1st, 1992, during the Man and Wolf storyline, old Cap attempted to help out his buddy John Jameson, who some of you may know as the son of J. Jonah Jameson, a military man who was given the Moonstone and through it became the character known as Man-Wolf. Cap got himself shot up with some magical wolf juice and basically turned into a werewolf. Also, Wolverine was there too. It was a really weird story, but hey, it's the 90s. What would you expect? So yeah, there, I learned you a little something. Let's get back to the review.
Before the team pulls out completely, they decide to add one more hero to their roster, that being Iron Man, who they get back on their side by overwriting his genetic code with Norman Osborn's Goblin formula. Oh, geez, because you know, Tony Stark didn't have enough personality problems as it is. Now you put some Goblin up in there? Yeah, I don't see any problems at all arising with the Iron Goblin, that's for sure. Although I suppose Norman Osborn did rip off Tony's look not so long ago, so it's only fair that Tony rip it off right back in retaliation. Back at base camp, we get a very touching little scene wherein Captain America actually relinquishes control of the operation to Flash Thompson, saying he's proved himself and that he believes in him. Obviously, for a soldier and military man like Flash Thompson, a commendation from Captain America is a compliment of the absolute highest order. He's positively beaming, and the art does a great job capturing how he feels. Now that the good guys have some new blood on their side, their next plan of attack is to go after an AIM installation where apparently some
important technology is being kept. They hope if they can get Tony to tinker around with it, maybe, just maybe, they can take the fight to the Spider-Queen. The fight to get inside the AIM facility is absolutely fierce. They need to get past Spiderized Hank Pym as well as Spiderized Black Panther. Plus, there's the House of Horrors that awaits them inside the labs, grisly experiments pulled off by the Jackal on behalf of the Spider-Queen. However, just when it seems like our heroes are at their absolute lowest, at their darkest moment in time, a miracle occurs. In one of the tanks, they find Peter Parker, alive and well. Or, you know, as well as you can be when you're in a tank. Has Flash Thompson and his team of freedom fighters found the secret weapon they need to undo the Spider-Queen's rule? Let's find out together, shall we, as we dig on into Spider Island number 3. Picking up from where the last issue left off, Venom and Flash attempt to extract the Peter Parker they found inside the Jackal's old laboratory. Flash is pretty ecstatic over this turn of events, as the way he sees it, it's a chance to go back and right the wrongs of his past. The Spider-Queen is positively furious when the news finally reaches her ears, and she decides that she's going to have to start taking these rebels very seriously, as well as changing up her own personal tactics, going for the heart of her enemies. Back at the rebel base camp, everyone's split down the middle on whether or not they trust this new Peter Parker. Seeing as he was found in the Jackal's laboratory, it doesn't exactly take a rocket science to consider the fact that maybe, just maybe, this Peter's a clone, even though he does check out with all the tests so far. We get a very nice scene of Peter and Flash together as it sinks in that they now know each other's alternate identities. Yeah, I know before, and a bunch of people pointed this out to me in the comments, that in the comics they did actually figure out each other's identities, but for the purpose of this Secret Wars tie-in story, they're just figuring it all out for the very first time right now. Spider-Man says that he's in no position to lead this group. He's months behind the curve now, and Flash's Venom has been doing a really good job, and that the men out there respect him. What's interesting is we find out that Flash had ulterior motives for bringing Spider-Man back. It wasn't just to lead, it wasn't just to be a fighter, no. You see, he wanted Peter for his scientific abilities. Flash wants Pete to help oversee a secret weapon, but more so than that, he wants him there to be able to turn all of their friends back to normal once all the fighting is done. It's in this issue as well the heroes decide that maybe they need to change up their own tactics just a little bit. Now that they have more fighters on their side, maybe they need to go and get people like Mary Jane, Carly Cooper, and even Betty back from the Spider's control, which they managed to do with the help of some lizards. Hey ladies, welcome back to the good side. Ooh, sorry about the scales though, those will take some getting used to. It's at this moment Vision discovers that all the women were actually packing tracers, which is why the Spider-Queen forces managed to find the rebel base and start wrecking the place up. The heroes decide to make a tactical retreat, everyone except for Iron Man. Tony says he's already felt his mind succumbing to the Goblin formula, and he doesn't want to see himself turn into a monster before their very eyes. So what he does is actually quite amazing. He takes the Black Knight's Ebony Blade and the Goblin Glider and decides to go on one last glorious suicide mission, as the comic ends. Flash Thompson and the surviving Avengers are going to need to pull out all the stops if they want to defeat the Spider-Queen and reclaim their city. All this and more in the pages of Spider Island number 4, the penultimate issue in this series. So, picking up from where the last issue left off, the heroes had been dealt a very serious thrashing and were forced to leave their underground lair. They're now setting up shop in Avengers Mansion, which is a terrible idea because if you were a terrible rampaging Spider-Queen, that's the first place you would go to look. For about the third issue in a row now, all the heroes take time out to say how proud they are of Flash Thompson as Venom and how they hope he will lead them to ultimate victory. Peter Parker even goes an extra step further by gifting him a special new stealth spider suit that he was working on at Horizon Labs before the fall of New York. The hope is that this suit will give Flash the added protection for his symbiote in the final battle against the Spider-Queen and her sonic attacks. What's even more interesting is that Flash says that the symbiote, which is usually always evil and trying to take control of his mind, has been a real team player during this whole spider takeover thing. The first part of the hero's master assault plan is actually given over to Sturgon, the dinosaur scientist, who, using his reverse generation ray, a reference to an older Spider-Man story, causes all these skeletons of dinosaurs at the local New York museum to come to life and rampage through the city, taking out spider soldiers wherever they can find them. The dinosaurs are of course just a cool distraction while the rest of the Avengers team takes a frontal assault at the Spider-Queen's lair. The battle is hard fought, but with all the spider soldiers busy elsewhere, the heroes actually manage to get the upper hand on their opponent, the stealth suit doing its job. Of course, now that the Queen is more or less defeated, the heroes have themselves kind of an uncomfortable problem, and that is, do they kill her or not? Obviously, Spider-Man is a good guy and says no, they shouldn't, but everyone else who's actually
had to live and suffer through this horrible takeover, wants her dead. Then again, they don't really get much of a chance to decide because it's in the next few minutes that the Spider-Queen plays her trump card, and that is she basically evolves like she was a freaking Pokemon. This isn't even her final form, man. The Spider-Queen's forces is on the run. Victory is in sight for the heroes, but what horrible cost will they have to pay to save their city? Let's find out together, shall we, as we dig on into the pages of Spider Island number 5, the grand conclusion to this Secret Wars tie-in. As the comic opens, the rampaging Spider-Queen causes the heroes' forces to fracture. This gives Flash Thompson horrible flashbacks to the day that Peter Parker, Spider-Man, died. It's because of this he bullheadedly charges full force directly into the Spider-Queen's sonic attack, even though his new suit isn't built to absorb that kind of damage. It's however here at this moment though Flash pulls off quite possibly his most brilliant maneuver yet, and that is he talks to the symbiote and says that it should take control of the Spider-Queen. And you know what? The symbiote actually talks and agrees to the plan, saying Flash Thompson is more than just a host, he's its friend. The Venom symbiote manages to pilot the Spider-Queen and get her to take a gigantic header off the skyscraper. She sadly doesn't squash on the ground below, but she does end up getting squashed by Dr. Stagon and the rampaging dinosaurs. The day is saved. Unfortunately, Flash's body took way too much damage in the attack and he ends up passing away. But before he goes, he and Peter are able to have one last touching conversation, saying that in the end they were each other's heroes. With the Queen dead, the heroes go about rebuilding their city. What gets interesting though is it's at this point one of the members of the Thor Corps finally chooses to show up. He says that while God King Doom may not have liked the Spider-Queen, she was a Baron, so there wasn't a heck of a lot he could do. But now with her gone, it's time to choose a new Baron, and rightfully that job goes to Peter Parker. Understandably, his first act as Baron is to change the name of their realm. Spider Island isn't exactly fitting anymore. No, it needs a better name. A name befitting the hero that saved them. It shall hence be known as Flashville, or Thompson Town, or whatever. He hasn't really figured it out yet, but they're gonna name it after Flash. Perhaps most interestingly enough, as the comic ends, we see some people would rather prefer to live as spider creatures, or dinosaurs, or lizards, or even vampires. It's a gigantic city full of freaks. What's not to love as the comic ends? Spider Island number 5 is a fitting end to this miniseries, and yet another issue that really hits home just how cool Agent Venom is. He gets to be the hero, gets to win everybody's respect, and then gets to heroically sacrifice himself. I'm also glad they didn't feel the need to throw in a swerve with Peter Parker at the very end for him to go, ha ha ha, I was actually a clone all along, or something similarly silly. Beyond that, I don't know what else to say. It was a fun story told competently, and all the loose ends were wrapped up at the very end. Definitely one of the better endings, in fact, for these Secret Wars tie-ins, I would say. Overall, I give this one a very much deserved 8 out of 10.
Hey guys, Joel here reminding you that this video was made possible thanks to our many great patrons. If you want to become a patron and get exclusive comic book cast content, then click the Patreon link below and see how you can help us bring you the content you've come to love. Every little bit helps, and thanks for listening.